Hey guys, Redneck Mini 14 here, and on today's episode of The Guns That Shaped Me, we're going to talk about the first pistol that I ever bought. Now, I had been acquiring guns since I was 16, started with shotguns that were my grandfather's, and, my mom had a .22 pistol that I would take out shooting every once in a while, and, then all of a sudden when I was 18, I started buying my own rifles and shotguns and building a collection. But when I got around to the age of 21, I could finally start to buy handguns, because you can only buy rifles and shotguns when you're 18 to 20, between 18 and 21, but when you're 21, you can start to buy pistols and revolvers. And so once I got around to the age of 21, I was really wanting to start to add some handguns to my collection, because the only one that I had was the Ruger Mark II that belonged to my mom. Everything else I had were long guns. And so back in the day, I was working at Walmart in the lawn and garden section, and this guy who I worked with, he said that his cousin was thinking about selling his 9mm pistol, and he didn't know what kind of 9mm pistol it was. So I asked him, and I was like, hey, would he want to sell it to me? And he said, yeah, he's looking for $250. And I was like, yeah, I think I can swing that, but I want to know what kind of pistol it is. Because, I wasn't into, back then anyway, I wasn't really into the Glocks and the plastic fantastic pistols, which you see everywhere now. I was more into guns like the Ruger P series and the 1911, and guns that were hammer fire and had metal frames, things like that. And so, he finally got back to me and he said it's a Smith and Wesson. He said it's either a Smith and Wesson 5904 or a 5906. And I was not familiar with the Smith and Wesson pistols. I was more into Rugers and other brands of pistols, so I wasn't as familiar with the Smith and Wessons, and I had never heard of them before. Because back then, I didn't really know a whole lot about all these different guns, especially guns that were discontinued. So I had to look it up, and I looked it up, and sure enough, it ended up being this 5904 here, but it is a metal frame gun. It has, just make sure that it's unloaded before I start handling it. It has a hammer, and it has a safety decocker, much like the Beretta 92 or the Ruger P series, which I was really into. Let me zoom out just a little bit. And so I did some research on it, and I was like, yeah, that would be a really cool pistol to have. And I told him, I'll get you $250 and we can meet after work one night and do the transaction. So we did, and he, sold me the gun and 2 magazines and a soft pistol case. So that was cool. I didn't know I was going to get all that. But $250, and I got my very first pistol, and it was 9mm. 9mm is really the caliber that I was looking for, and it doesn't have as many rounds in the magazine as, say, a Glock, which has 17, but this has 15 plus 1 in it, so that's a decent carrying capacity. And I really wanted, so the main reason why I wanted a pistol was because I wanted a woods gun that I could carry in the woods, because I didn't have anything in my collection that I could use. I mean, I could use my mom's .22, but that's, there's some gray area in there whether or not you should be able to carry that when you're deer hunting. I wanted something that was center fire, because this center fire pistol is definitely legal to carry when you're deer hunting, and I wasn't going to hunt with it. I was just going to use it for protection, in case I needed to. So I wanted a centerfire pistol, and 9mm fit the bill for a defensive handgun for that. And so this was my first woods gun. And I carried it for a few years, I think, in the woods, but I actually found that, and it could be a magazine issue or something, but I actually, I didn't have any problems with it when I was just shooting Full Metal Jacket through it. But when I got out some hollow points and tried shooting hollow points through it, I actually had a few jams with it. And so that's when I decided I wasn't going to carry this particular pistol in the woods anymore. And by that time I had a few other handguns, and so I just stopped carrying this one and started carrying something else. But this really set me off for buying handguns, and I bought many, many more handguns. In fact, this is, like I said, this was the first Smith and Wesson that I ever bought. And I bought a few other Smith and Wesson pistols after that. I got a 5906 and a Model 39. And I got them because I fell in love with this pistol and the whole 5939 series of pistols. And I just wanted some more, and I still want some more. I wouldn't mind having like the 10mm versions, or even the 40 cal or the 45 caliber versions, but those are more expensive. The 9mm are a little more economical because there's just a lot more of them out there. So like the 459, the 659, the 5906, the 5904, the 5903, all those pistols, even just the basic, the original 59s. Well, I don't know about anymore, but back then they were not that expensive. But say the 1006 or the 1076 or the 1066, I don't know what all the different models are, which is just a single stack 10mm, which was meant for the FBI, I think. I don't remember which model exactly, but one of them was meant for the FBI. Those are very pricey if you ever find one, and there's not that many of them out there. I don't know how long they made them, but there's not as many of them out there as the 9mm or even the 40 caliber versions, and they're just really, really expensive, and they're hard to find magazines for. So it'd be really cool to have one, because I'd really like to have a 10mm, but they're really expensive, and I really wish that Smith and Wesson would make these types of guns again. I've heard that they got rid of the tooling for them, and so that's why they can't do them anymore. But honestly, I think even if you got rid of the tooling, even if you don't do the exact same model of handgun, you should still be able to get back to making guns like this, maybe an updated version of this. I mean, I don't think it would be that hard to do, but I don't know anything, because I don't know anything about manufacturing firearms. But anyway, I wish they would come out with something like this again, because I'm just not a huge fan of the M&Ps. I'm not a huge fan of polymer pistols in general. There's a few that I like. There's, the Glocks and a handful of other ones that I like, but they're just, polymer pistols are everywhere. I'm more a fan of the metal frame pistols. Now this particular one, the 5904, is an aluminum frame pistol, so it's a little bit lighter than my 5906, which is all stainless steel, but still I would prefer an aluminum handgun frame over just a polymer one, but that's just personal preference. But yeah, this was my first 9mm pistol, my first pistol ever that I ever bought, and so it does have a little bit of sentimental value, and I don't plan on ever getting rid of it. It is, the 59 series is one of my favorite series of pistols.
Hey, before I go, I just thought I'd remind everybody that I do have a second channel called Redneck Off the Range. Over there, I post most of my non-gun related content, so whether it's a video on my new tractor, my power tools, my projects that I'm working on, maybe wild game recipes, or just a random vlog. I post all of this kind of content over on my secondary channel. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, go check it out, Redneck Off the Range. But that's all for this video, so subscribe to my channel, like me on Facebook. I'm Redneck Mini 14, and until next time, be safe.